usually we have a guy here named Dan who
Hi, Dan.
runs all this shit, and he had to work. So,
our jobs.
But he's working from home.
Okay, I wish I could.
For the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And now they're going to now they're trying to mandate a vaccination on him.
For home?
For home. Yeah, he works at home. I have another buddy who...
That's scary.
So my wife has this friend who works for the patent office.
Mm-hmm.
And he suffers from seizures and blah, blah, blah.
Uh-oh.
He has worked from home for a decade. They mandated him.
No.
He got it.
He didn't.
Had his first seizure in a decade.
Dumb.
And then 2 days after he got it, they took away the mandate for him to have it.
Oh my God.
And I was telling him, I'm like, don't do it, man. Let him fire you.
Yeah.
Let him fire you.
I have a friend who he worked for the Wright Center, and they mandated the vaccine, so he resigned. And the next day, the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional to mandate it.
Well, the hope is Friday that tomorrow the Supreme Court. So we're recording this on Insurrection Day.
Oh my God! I did see. I saw. Right. It's the anniversary.
Yes. So today is January 6th, 2021.
Yeah.
And so do you? I don't. This is literally the first time we're talking to each other.
Literally.
So what I'm when COVID hit. And I'm just so tired of doing these
I know
these topics, but
everybody has to though.
It's the only way. I got very upset over the fact that my sister went to a school board meeting in Abington Heights, and within 2 days the paper was calling her a terrorist.
I was on that page.
Were you?
I was on. My picture was there.
That really upset me.
It doesn't make any sense. How are we terrorists when we're just sticking up for our children?
Yeah. So then I started to get more proactive about these people that you're demonizing,
right,
are not bad people.
No,
they are people who have the same concerns and hopes, wants, dreams, and fears about their children as
right.
anybody else.
Well, the board sits there and says that they are trying to protect our children, but they're turning around. That's what we're doing, actually.
Right.
We're there saying, we should be making these decisions for our own children. You're there to educate them.
Well, therein lies the problem for me is it's not their job to treat them medically.
Right.
Which I believe. So I actually watched the school board meeting last night.
Yeah.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of the school board members actually said that it is not our job.
Yes.
To medically,
they finally said that.
Yeah. Now
I think it was the new superintendent.
I don't know.
Dr. Schaefer.
It's really hard to see on the Zoom who's talking when everyone's wearing when only one person is wearing the N95. I know. Which was brought up. I don't know
great.
who was the school board member who actually I was like, man, this guy knows what he's talking about.
I don't know his name.
Is he new?
So in the summer when they were voting on whether before we went back to school, they did vote on to have masks optional or to have them mandated. And he was the only one that voted masks optional. The guy that was spewing out the scientific background on it.
It was really profound.
Yeah.
To hear him speak. I'll play it for you later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was going over, it was like a study out in Bangladesh or something, but it was a huge study.
Randomized controlled study.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was 330,000 participants in the study, which is that's a good study.
Right.
Because the ones that are for the COVID vaccine are 1,200.
What was the outcome of that study though?
So
was
the
it
outcome,
over the efficacy of masks?
Yeah. It was basically.
And which ones were effective?
Okay. So cloth, we know does nothing.
Yeah, doesn't do anything.
And then surgical, which has a 3-layer, and then the N95, which is a little bit thicker.
Yeah.
Less porous than the surgical masks, and they're the most effective, but still you're at risk with an N95.
Yeah. And I basically what the study said was that anything less than an N95 is useless.
It's useless.
Yeah. The surgical mask there was an efficacy, but it was within the margin of error to show that there was no baseline to
say that it works any better than a cloth mask.
Right. All right. So for those who don't know, what is your background?
So I am a registered nurse here in Pennsylvania.
Are you from here?
I am. I graduated high school from Wallenpaupack.
Oh, okay. I can't spell that.
I went to Marywood for my bachelor's. I worked in the hospital setting as a nurse's assistant for 6 years before I went to nursing school.
Locally?
Yeah, at CMC. When I graduated, I worked in the OR, so operating room.
Yeah.
Where we are required to wear masks for surgery.
Right.
Which is where they're supposed to be.
Right.
And it's funny because we get yearly fit tested, it's called, for the N95 masks.
Because that's the proper way to use them.
So
you mean fit test as far as like how it fits your face?
So there's different.
Everyone has to be fit tested for an N95 to work properly.
Yes, there's a large, medium, and a small.
Okay.
And
tell me
they
more.
put this hood.
I would need an extra large custom. I have a big head.
So they're supposed to fit snug between the nose and the chin, right? And everybody, we're all different, right? So they put this hood on you. So this is the test now. They put a hood on you and they spray like sugar water in the air.
Uh-huh.
And you have to tell them which size you don't taste the sugar. And you do it for 3 minutes. Now, by the third minute, you're like, I taste it. No matter what size you have on. Yeah. But they're like, I don't taste it.
It's good, but it's not perfect.
It takes time to go in to the mask. So I'm a small. I've always been a small. But
good for you.
I still taste it at the end of those 3 minutes. So you know that it stops it at some point. But that's the exposure level, right?
Yeah.
So that's what they talk about. You have to be in the room for X amount of time. That's what their exposure for COVID is too.
Right.
But now they're saying that the school uses 15 minutes if you're in a continuous exposure. Now they're saying it's up towards 3 hours.
So are you still a nurse?
I am still a nurse. I work in a community health setting. Sorry,
that was my phone. I'm airdropping something to myself.
Of course. No, I work in the community now. I go to people's homes.
Okay.
There are people that are sick enough to stay out of the hospital, but they need care at home.
Right.
I see a lot of people that come out of the hospital that still need like a continuous care base.
Yeah.
So I have a, back and forth between the OR and home health.
So it's safe to say that you are relatively knowledgeable on the healthcare field.
Relatively, yes.
Okay.
Good. And how many years experience?
I have 6 years as a nurse. So there's other people out there that have
just so if you guys want to see this. What's it? Apple F. Whatever. So those are the efficacy of masks.
Yes.
For those who don't know, who can't see it, on the left side is nothing, cloth mask, surgical mask, and N95, and it goes on the top. So it's persons not infected is wearing, and then if you tip your head back a little bit, persons infected is wearing. So the only thing that seems effective is an N95 with an N95 when the person not infected is wearing and the person infected is wearing. If you go through the person who is infected is wearing versus the person who is not infected is wearing, the surgical mask is beneficial for an hour.
At least, yes. So also with the N95s, the ones that are for the public now are, in my opinion,
shoddy. They look like
they're K95s. If you look at them closely, I have a pack of them.
What does that mean?
So it's just where they were made, basically, out of the country.
That's the difference between K95 and N95?
Correct.
Oh.
Yes.
Wait, really?
So they're the same kind of layered and, all that fun stuff. But the N95s that we wear in the hospital, they're duckbills, we call them. They go like this.
Right.
Right. And you can kind of see them, the ones that the public wear too, but over the head this way, like the 2-layer.
Oh, so you wear it. You almost wear it like a respirator.
They're tight. Yes.
Yeah.
They're tight. The ones that, the ones people that you see, they're around the ears. They're not as tight. And I know for a fact because I could see it that they're too big for people's faces. So I think the N95s, the ones that we are fit tested to wear, are the most effective.
So this is from spring 2021. CDC expects the Omicron variant to spread more easily. And what it says at the bottom is that it will take 25 hours for an infectious dose of COVID-19 to transmit between people wearing non-fit tested N95 respirators. If they're tightly sealed. If they're using tightly sealed N95s where only 1% of the particles enter the face piece, they will have 2,500 hours of protection.
Interesting.
That seems like a typo. 2,500 hours?
Yeah. No way.
Maybe it's not.
So your mask, how often do you have to keep doing that? So if you wear an N95 in the hospital setting, how often do you have to get like pressure tested or any of that stuff?
So in my experience in the hospital with the N95s, we only wore them when we went into TB rooms. Tuberculosis rooms, which are negative pressure rooms as well. Doors are closed. They have different air filter in those rooms. There's only like a few in the hospital alone.
And is that to prevent you from getting TB?
So it actually just like helps disperse the particles so they're not lingering in the room.
Okay.
It helps them like filter out better. And then the N95, you have these layers of protections. That's what they were talking about last night.
Right.
Between like vaccines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But with the N95s, they're so tight. We're in the rooms 15 minutes or less. And then you're coming out, degowning, and if you have to go back in, you're putting on a new one.
Right. That's every time you go in that TB room.
Correct. Yes. So you're not reusing them like some are that we had to in the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, which is wild.
When were you in home health care when this started?
I was. Mm-hmm.
And why did you go to home health care? Is that like hospice or what is that?
So hospice is a different setting.
Yeah.
I switched to home health because of my children, because I have 3 young children that they're
What's the age range of your kids?
9, 7, and 6.
Okay.
I was working the OR off shift 11 to 11, and I had to rely on other people just to pick them up from the bus or pick them up from school.
Right.
And it was just like too much. So now I can kind of make my own schedule. I see my patients after I drop them off from school, and then they go home. I'm there when they're off the bus, so I have enough time to see my patients in between. So it works better for me personally.
Yeah. And
it kind of worked out with the pandemic too. In
what way?
Because they were getting mandated at the hospital to stay. They're understaffed anyway. It just worked out a little bit better.
So you're at the very beginning with your clients. What was your thought? It seems like there's 2 groups. It seems like one group is ultimate fear.
Right.
And one group is caution to the wind.
Right. So in the beginning, I feel like no one knew what the hell was going on.
Right.
And I was one of those people. I was like, oh my God, this is actually scary, because this is the first thing that came up that actually healthcare workers across the board were actually scared to come in contact with. Doctors, nurses in the hospital setting, nurses that I worked with were like, we're nervous to go in people's houses because we don't know what the hell's going on. No one knows what's going on. Right. Experts didn't know what was going on.
And this is the beginning of 2020 or post-lockdown?
Post-lockdown is when kind of patients started saying, well, we don't want you coming into our house because we don't know.
Okay.
So we were, losing
quality of care really changes at that moment.
Yeah. And, we were scared because our company didn't have enough PPE in the beginning. Each nurse got 2 N95 masks. I was like, when am I supposed to use this? Because I know that I'm not supposed to reuse them.
Right.
That's how we were taught. That's how we were trained.
Right.
And my boss was like, well, just save it until you think someone has it. And I'm like, oh, okay. There's just like, we didn't know what to do.
Did you have any patients that you were supposed to go see that refused service, and there was like an adverse cause, effect because of that?
We had some people put our services on hold, but none of them were like, they didn't like get sick.
In other words, are you asking did they get worse because they wouldn't anybody see them?
Well, I mean, I know that there was surgeries postponed. There was certain treatments postponed. So my son's a cancer survivor.
Wow.
And I heard stories of,
wait. Can I say this? Every time he says his son's a cancer, he's a dick.
The son?
Yeah. just so this is how clear we are about like how survived he is. We can say these things because he's such a great kid.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think he is. He's 17.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
wow.
A troublemaker.
I was a 17-year-old boy at one point. They're
for sure.
They're a lot. But no, like I heard the horror stories of surgeries, cancer surgeries that were postponed because of fears over COVID.
Right.
We even had a friend who was going through, something similar during all of this. And, they had to go to the hospital, be dropped off in the parking lot and go through all of this alone.
Right. So the patients that put our services on hold, they were like people that needed wound care, things like that. Like the sick ones, like they didn't refuse us to come in, which was fine. But you know what did happen? All like my patients now, if I need to send them out to the hospital, they're like, I don't want to go because of COVID. And I'm like, COVID's not going to kill you. This right now is going to kill you. Like you need to go.
Oh, so you're like one of those tough nurses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I had people
no bullshit.
No, like
I love it.
People in like heart failure, like respiratory. I'm like, you need to go.
Yeah.
Like I have spent more time convincing patients to go. Like I know that they have a right to refuse to go, but they're not going for the right reason. They're not going because they're scared of COVID. And I'm like, you're in active heart failure. You're like, you need to go now. Like, COVID's not going to kill you.
And the real, the crazy thing about fear is a future that has not happened.
We were primed in the beginning. And I think that's like what the biggest thing.
What do you mean primed?
So we were primed in the beginning.
Who's
like
we?
The world, the population.
Okay.
Literally.
I didn't know if it was like we nurses or.
Everybody was primed because there was no PPE. There was no masks for anybody, even the general public that wanted them.
Right.
And then you see people in the stores still now with like masks on and gloves on. Like, like they were primed in the beginning. Like I need this to be safe.
Right.
And I think now that's the biggest issue with the masks in school for kids. Even last night, someone made a comment like, oh, well, I think everybody should wear them so my kid's safe. Like that's delusional thinking. Right. Like your kid doesn't need to wear a mask to keep my kid safe.
So the math on it, if I'm not mistaken, like let's work up to this.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So at what point did you start to understand what it was like time period?
Let's see, time period.
And what did you understand what it is as?
So
let me say that like a normal person.
Yeah.
So
let's reword that.
I think early on,
I used to drink and now I smoke pot. So that's why my words are
broken.
Like that. Yeah.
So early on with, like I said, my son's a cancer survivor. Part of the long-term effects of that are he has asthma and a couple of different things from the chemo. So when this all first started happening, you see the images coming from China and then Italy. And I remember watching, my son plays basketball, and I remember watching, it was an NBA game with him, and it was the Dallas Mavericks against somebody in Dallas. And I remember them coming, it was against the Utah Jazz. And I remember them, before the game, everybody's warming up, everything's good. The officials come out and are huddled up. And I remember seeing Mark Cuban's face, and he's like, what is going on? The owner of the Mavericks. And he looks at his phone and he's like, oh my God, they're killing the NBA.
Yeah, I remember that day.
And they sent everybody home, and it was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, Rudy Gobert had COVID, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is real.
Right.
This isn't something that's like happening on the other side of the world. Like
it's here.
And in my mind, this is the zombie apocalypse. That's what it was being made out to be.
For sure, that they were priming us for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you see all of these things, and I'm like, oh my God. So, with my son being, very much, immune compromised with whatever he's got going on, it's like, oh, And I remember just the effects, and my wife and I are business owners. Our business was shut down, and it's like 2 weeks to 15 days to flatten the curve. And by the way, here we are. Congratulations, guys. We're in
5
year
years.
3 of 15 days to flatten the curve.
Feels like just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And I remember like going through all of that, and then somewhere along the line, a couple weeks later, I was driving down the road downtown in Scranton, and I saw my son's pediatrician, and I pull over, kind of to the side. There was nobody on the road. He's going for a jog. I roll down the window. I'm like, hey, doctor, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. He comes over to the window with it rolled down, no mask, reaches his hand inside to shake my hand. And I'm like, what is going on?
Right.
And it was in that moment that I had a little conversation. I'm like, we're worried about our son. And he said, you don't need to worry.
Wow.
This isn't going to affect him. He'll be fine. And that's when I was like, wait a minute.
What do you mean?
So I immediately went home to my wife, who, we're already in enough emotional turmoil because the business is shut down. We're terrified for our son, all of the above. And it clicks for her like, oh, he's going to be okay. And then maybe a week later, I had a conversation with my father-in-law, who is a funeral director in Northern Jersey, the epicenter of COVID in America at that time.
Right.
And this was about a month into it. He's like, I have the reports from the past month. You will never believe the data that we're getting back. He's like, you have nothing to worry about with COVID.
Amazing.
I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, a lot of people are going to die. There's no two ways about it. A lot of people are going to die. But the one piece of data that just kept over and over, kept ringing out to me, and I couldn't get out of my head. And I had this conversation with so many other people, and I'm like, what am I missing?
Right.
The average age of death in Pennsylvania from COVID is 79.
Right.
The average age of death in Pennsylvania,
the average life expectancy,
right,
all cause in 2019 was 28 and a half.
Wait, 28 and a half?
Yes. So COVID being real, being bad, killing people. How is the life expectancy getting COVID 6 months longer than all cause deaths?
You mean 78 and a half, not 28 and a half.
What did I say, 28?
Yeah.
Jeez, no.
I'm like, oh, this is the apocalypse.
This is great.
Sorry. Yeah, Michael, what movie? Yeah, what sci-fi film was this you were watching, buddy?
Average age of death in Pennsylvania in 2019 was 78 and a half.
Right.
Average age of death from COVID, 79.
Right.
What is going on?
Right. We have the oldest population, I feel like.
Yeah. Especially in Lackawanna County. We have an incredibly older population.
So when did you go, this seems like bullshit?
So the bullshit that I was on Twitter a lot, looking up at everything. I was following it in China when it first was only in China.
Right.
The propaganda that was coming out of there, I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
No one ever fell in the streets like that.
No.
Yes. No, that never happened.
And also, like with the camera crew.
Yes.
And then the guy that they're filming is in a hazmat suit, and they're just in, clothes that we're wearing today.
Like they just got
I'm like, what the fuck is this?
They just look like they just got off the back nine.
Yeah. And also for me going in and out of different people's houses, I go into facilities like around Scranton, like either nursing homes, or the one that stuck out to me was Greenridge Manor. Now they're just for like a lower income, like mental illness kind of facility.
Okay.
Which I had a ton of patients there. I was there all the time.
Okay.
They had no restrictions there, meaning they didn't make their residents like walk around in masks.
And what time period is this?
This is like in the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
Zero cases there. Now they're on top of each other. They don't shower.
Yeah.
I love all the patients there, but place is filthy.
Yeah.
No restrictions for them. No cases. I'm like, how are they not getting it?
Yeah.
And they're allowed to go to the bar. They're allowed to go to the store. They're allowed to go wherever they want. They're not restricted to that space either. And the residents go. They go out. They do whatever the hell they want. Zero cases. I'm like,
it almost feels like
what is going on?
The more restrictions and rules, the worse it gets.
The worse it gets. Why?
Is there a causality to that, do you think?
I think it was like their immune systems maybe were a little bit better.
Well, what,
because it weren't restricted.
When you're licking toilet seats?
Yeah, literally. Literally, they're standing in shit on the floor that I'm walking through also.
Not to disparage. I mean, there is a section of life that is like that, so we can't deny it, and we can't, it's.
But I think
sometimes
that's
it's fun to poke fun at the pain.
I think that's what it is.
So
they weren't fearful of it. They never talked about it in that spot. Even the workers that worked there, they weren't restricted either.
Are they restricted at all yet?
So they actually closed down.
Oh, they're closed for
closed.
good?
The state just closed them down for other reasons.
Okay, so we can't talk shit.
We can't talk shit.
Yeah, because they're not there anymore. Oh, okay. Now I feel better. All right, great.
But the workers weren't restricted either, and they did not come down with it either. They were around the residents all the time.
They just carried on as normal.
That is wild. That is so contrary to everything that we've been told.
I know. And that's what the thing is. Like, it sucks that like it's a health issue because not everybody's in healthcare.
Right.
You know what I mean? So everyone's watching what they see on TV thinking these experts that aren't even on the front lines hasn't taken care of one COVID patient.
Is that now number one, that's true.
Right.
These people that are on TV aren't taking care of
they're
COVID
not.
patients.
No, they're not.
But how is that do you and your peers talk about the frustration of that? Like what do you say to each other
We're like, this is fucking bullshit.
I mean, is that the sentiment?
Most nurses probably all feel the same way. I know there's some out there that like, I'm not denying that people have died, but I think that they are dying from other things.
Or with other things.
Right. Yeah. Right. We know that.
Or because they're not getting treated. There's no early treatment.
They're not getting treated properly. Like there's,
What is the proper treatment with COVID?
I mean, like there's debate on this too. Yeah. Like I had COVID. I didn't do anything. I didn't take any supplements.
I didn't know that I had it. And I had it. I thought I had heat exhaustion, which tells you how dumb I am.
Heat exhaustion. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I had it about 3 weeks ago.
My kids had it, sniffles. Yeah. I didn't give them anything because my kids hate taking medicine. So, okay, fine. Yeah. I got it. The worst 3 days I couldn't eat anything because no food tasted. I couldn't taste food. So it was the worst 3 days of my life. But I didn't take any supplements. I didn't take any medicine. I didn't get the true like congestion or anything with it. So it's like hard to say. What time of year did you get this?
April
of 2020.
Oh, like at the very beginning of COVID, you got it?
Hold on. No, April 2021.
21, okay.
I forget how long we've been doing this.
Yeah,
this is the third calendar year.
Yeah, that's wild.
Like I said, it feels like 15 days ago.
But they do say, like I do my research and then early treatment like the monoclonal antibodies.
Yeah.
And
Which
then,
are EUA approved.
right. And ivermectin,
Which is not.
but and they also, I was listening to this one doctor, he was talking about like an iodine nasal
Yes.
I've heard of
lavage.
that, yeah.
Ben, I forget the name of it.
And
I did hydrogen peroxide.
you could do the peroxide or you
Yep.
could do just like plain iodine,
Right.
which you have to water it down a lot if anyone's going to do it.
Yeah.
Because iodine burns.
Yeah.
But he says that like that's early. If you're going out into like a crowded area, do that. So it kills the virus right there.
I just powered through life.
We all did.
Well, you
Kinda
didn't know.
I know a lot of nurses that got it and they didn't take any special medications either because we weren't that. It was like a cold. It was just like,
Yeah.
a regular head cold that you get every year.
So I have this theory.
Let's hear it.
And I don't know if it's
A good one?
This should be good.
I don't know if it's legit, and I still haven't figured out the way to like tell it in a way that is impactful. But in essence, it's like a thought experiment.
Okay.
The PCR test cannot distinguish between COVID and the flu.
Facts.
Has not been able to since the beginning, and that's why
Facts.
the CDC just stopped it.
Exactly. I think we might have the same theory.
Is your theory what happens when you don't treat the flu?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was a major flu.
Okay. So according to the CDC,
Mm-hmm.
in 2019, their up-to-date data that every year the flu accounts for 24 to 64,000 deaths per year,
Yes. Including children.
including children, and I believe over 50 million confirmed diagnosed cases of the flu every year
Right.
in America.
Yes.
Um,
For the ones that got tested.
and then a year ago, the flu cases were like 1,200.
We're 0. Yeah.
Right. It is, and this is the part that like really drives me nuts, because to me, I'm thinking like this thought process makes sense. Like if I was like a third year
Right.
medical student and I'm at the flu convention and I'm in the back of the room and they get done telling me how they treat flu,
Right.
what their what the protocols are, what the early treatment is, what preventative, what happens when you get it.
Right.
And I raise my hand and I say, what happens when you don't treat it?
Right.
Like what happens to that 24 to 64,000 number?
Right.
Is that
Goes
where
up.
you're at?
So this is
But how much? That's my question.
Right, how much? So my theory is like kind of along the same lines, because I was just talking about this with my friend. She was like, well, what do you think it is? And I was like, well, I think it was just a different flu strain that because everybody started to get tested for it.
Right.
Because normally if you get sick, I've never had a flu test.
Have you ever tested?
Is there a flu test?
It's a swab. It's a
What?
swab.
Yeah.
It's the PCR test. It's a swab.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the creator of the PCR test, Carrie Mullis, said you should never use this to test for illness.
Really?
Because
Ever.
you could just keep testing and finding and
Well,
finding.
because isn't it like there's
It's
just
it stands for the polymerase chain reaction.
Yeah.
test.
isn't there just kind of like cells in the body that
Right.
like just kind of have it and it might be dormant, but you could still
right.
detect it?
So what it does is it duplicates.
Right.
So
wow.
when they run
Like
cycles,
they spin it.
Yeah.
right. So depending on how many cycles, you can get more stuff. So
Right.
so in other words, like if I wanted to find out, without using an electron microscope and just using a telescope. So that's basically what it does. Is the PCR test
Right.
makes it easier to see that it's there.
them. Yeah.
But this guy's, the guy who invented it and won the Nobel Prize for it, even said like, if you
Mullis
Carrie Mullis, yeah,
won a Nobel Prize for this thing.
yes.
Has he been like banned from things?
Interestingly enough, he died in August of 2019,
It's weird.
right
Not
around
weird
the
at
time
all.
that the outbreak happened in Wuhan.
Yeah.
Strange.
Strange.
Dun,
Isn't it weird?
But-
But he's on camera
Right.
saying, if you wanted to look for, uranium,
Any illness you can.
yeah, but you can find like uranium. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
crazy shit in people, because he's like human. We're whatever's in our environment is in us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an
Well, we
unfair
are
test.
our environment.
Exactly.
And
Our
he said-
environment is us.
And he said anything over 17 is a false. Anything over 17 cycles is a false positive.
There you go.
And the CDC has been running them at 40.
Right.
Really?
This is all real.
This is all thing,
And
yeah.
the thing that sucks about this is that we can't sit and have this conversation without people
Being
thinking
like,
we're
they're
nuts.
crazy. Well,
Correct.
but there's like backstories, because I have a friend. She was an ICU nurse when COVID first hit. She is now a CRNA. So she gets to intubate people and keep them alive during surgery. But I was asking her about this because her husband's also an ER doctor up in
Okay.
Jersey when it first hit. And they were both very still worried more about the flu. She's like, I remember having no ICU beds open for flu patients. She's like, we were putting people on ECMO, which is like your next step above a ventilator. She's like,
What is an ECMO?
ECMO is like they filter your blood and they to oxygenate your whole body.
Oh, so
'Cause-
you're basically like hooked up to the Matrix.
yeah.
Okay.
And once you're on ECMO, you're like maybe
This
not
is
going to
last
make
ditch.
this.
Yeah.
Last ditch effort.
This is
and
the Hail
200
Mary.
years ago, this was them bleeding you with leeches.
Yeah.
Yeah, basic. So, and she was saying that like for her flu years in the ICU, they were always slammed and they were always to capacity, and that's when they had the staff and the beds. You know
For
what I
just
mean?
flu.
For just the flu,
The annual
and
flu.
you never heard about that, did you?
No.
No, we never heard about it when it was just a flu.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yes.
I have a lot. So here's the thing. He and I talk about this sort of thing a lot. Okay. He is more informed on it. He has more time to delve into these
Sure.
things. Whereas,
You just got the cycle.
I don't know if that's supposed to make me feel good.
no,
he has
it
the
is.
time.
That's like your job, right?
No. Like, I mean,
Well,
yeah,
I'm not making any fucking money at it. I'm just,
Yeah.
I want to know the
hobby.
truth. That's all I want.
I'm out making money so I can take care of the family.
Meanwhile, I'm going to move into the garage in a week.
But like for me, I just kind of like my personality, I tend to just kind of take a step back, 10,000 foot overview. I look at things and I'm like, this doesn't add up. Like A, B, if
Right.
it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Should
Whereas
be.
he wants to know like,
Why is it a duck?
what kind of duck is it? And
What's the migratory pattern? How did it get here?
me, I don't care about the details.
Right.
So when I look at the hospital situation, and again, I'm not a doctor, I don't work in the medical field, I'm just observing and I have questions.
Right.
So you have a group of people who were understaffed, and I mean this in the most proper way possible. We're not trained for this because
Right.
it's a brand new disease that nobody knows anything about.
Right. And that's why they were scared about it.
Yeah, and what you're being told is if you get this, you're just going to die in the street.
Yeah.
Don't have the PPE. Getting COVID while working.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, fast forward a year and a half later, and we're at a point now where it is people are being fired
Right.
because they are refusing to take a vaccine when
People
they
are quitting.
probably already had COVID.
Correct.
People are quitting.
Right.
And now they're saying that the emergency rooms are overwhelmed due to unvaccinated people. Now, those are all facts. That's what's being said. Here's my question. That makes no sense. It doesn't
Right.
add up.
It doesn't add up.
When you are at war and you truly are facing an enemy that could kill you, you're not going to reject a doctor or a nurse who could potentially save a life because they're not taking a vaccine against something that A,
Right.
is not going to harm them, and B, they've already had.
Right. And survived.
It makes no sense.
No. And the other thing is when they're like, ICU is full. Well, how many beds are open in ICU?
Can you explain that? Can you explain the math and the healthcare system and how they come up with that math? They're like 80% full, 90%
Right.
full.
Okay. So let's say the ICU at CMC has like 12 beds. I forget how many they have. I think
Right.
it's more, but whatever.
Well, we're just
go with 12,
approximating and guessing.
right?
Yeah.
So if they're 50% full, 6 beds are full, right? And then so on and so on. But
Right.
if they shut down rooms, they don't have enough staff, because when you're in ICU, a nurse, you're either 1-to-1, which is one nurse takes care of one patient if they're on event, or if they're not on event, it's 1-to-2, and that's max. So if you only have 4 nurses,
You
how
can
many?
only help 8 people at
Correct.
most. And if 4 of them are ventilated, you can only help 4.
Correct. So that's where it is. So when you see those headlines like ICU beds are full, you have to look at, well, how many are open? Are you full to capacity at your 16 bed ICU?
Do you have
Or-
staff?
Right. Like, so that's misleading. So people are like, oh my God, the ICUs are full.
Right.
But they don't know that half of the nurses have been fired or not working. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where you have to where you have to step back and be like, that doesn't make sense.
It seems like, like fudgeable math. Like
It
it
is.
seems like,
It's like a play on words, really.
yeah.
It's borderline. It feels like borderline propaganda.
It's not borderline. It's propaganda for sure.
So when did you start? Because what seems to be happening is there seems to be like the baby birds who want to just consume the fear,
Right.
right? And then it seems like through the sequestration and the
Right. Chain of events.
the shitty stuff that people say about people who think like us.
Right.
It seems like we're finding common ground with
we're
more
gaining
people.
ground. Yeah, we're gaining the ground now.
and it seems like it's almost like when you walk, like you told me about situations like this before, where you walk into like a Lowe's or something, or no, you walked into the liquor store.
Yeah.
And it was almost like between him and the manager, there was a wink, like, "Oh, you're on my team."
Yeah, like we know
Yeah.
who
Do you know
we
what I
got
mean?
on our
Yeah.
side.
And that was somebody you were talking, without being specific. This was somebody who worked at a pharmaceutical company around here, correct?
Had family that worked at a pharmaceutical company.
And what did they tell you?
That their entire like doctors, scientists,
Yeah,
pharmaceutical working in the pharmaceutical world all refused to take the vaccine.
I know. And then that's what I mean. If people know that, like, they think you're being like you're lying, you're being facetious about it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. And if you want to have an opinion, if you want to take a stab at something that you think might be proven true or not
Right.
true later, that's one thing. You
Right.
know, like I think it's really interesting. You know, all the conspiracy theories from a year
We're all
ago
true.
turn out to
We're
be
all right,
Yeah,
like,
that's fucking terrifying.
yeah,
isn't it?
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
When
And
people
you
who are
have to-
labeled that are
Yeah.
now like, you're like, where that's what it was. Where I'm like, I'm calling people up who I thought were nuts.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
like, what's going on?
Well, and then that's the thing. It's like when you talk about things like this, you're not being crazy. You're just stating facts.
Right,
Like they're just facts.
right.
You know, and one of those facts came from a person who recently has been permanently suspended from Twitter, Dr. Robert Malone.
I know. I
Who-
heard.
Listen, you can argue whether or not he's right or wrong all day long, but there's one undeniable fact when he's talking about how you shouldn't give the RNA vaccines to kids. 'Cause
Right.
He's saying there could be possible long-term, effects.
They're still developing. I mean, come on.
And he's somebody who is vaccinated who suggests that older people or at-risk people get vaccinated.
Right.
He's just saying don't give it to kids. A, they don't need it. B, it could have possible long-term negative effects.
Right.
And then the question is, well, who are you to be the authority on this? He literally created it.
I know.
Those are
See,
all
that's-
facts.
I think when they first started talking about the vaccine, like before, when was that? When they started talking about the vaccine, 2020 at some point?
It was 2020, but if you remember correctly, there was a certain group of politicians who, for
Right.
9 months, said, "I will not take.
I will
this."
not take it because our ex president said that he wanted it to be pushed as fast as lightning, which
Was
Operation
Operation
Warp
Warp Speed. So
Right.
I mean, once they
and the
started,
seeds of doubt were sown by our now president and vice president.
right? Which, you know what? That's kind of was like my aha moment when I was like, well, they're talking about a vaccine and they're already thinking about it's going to come out in the next 12 months, and that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, because for those
Because they
that,
take studies and they take years
Yeah.
to be proven,
I think it's 7 to 10
Safe.
years to
Yeah.
go from concept to market.
Now, does that change because they were basically just retooling things that were already FDA approved? Does that change the process of being
no.
approved?
No,
or
nothing.
You have to
nothing
go
is
through-
FDA approved.
You have to go through phases.
Yeah.
And so I was reading the phases like for the kids, like when they were like, oh, we're going to try it on kids now. And I'm like, well, how many studies, like how many children were in your group that you already studied?
I
And it
believe
was like,
1,200.
it was like, yeah, very minimal to how
Now,
many kids we have
Usually
in the
these
United
studies are like
States.
30,000.
Like you need a
50,000
big
people.
control group to get the placebo effect. You need to get the,
Aren't there
Um,
more rules to this though, to where it's considered approved or safe or whatever the case may be? Like, aren't there rules behind any kind of
course.
vaccine, medication, anything like that? Like
all of it.
you watch a medical commercial on TV and at the end it's like, side effects may include,
Death.
and they
Yeah.
go through it. Where is that? Isn't that the law that you have to state those things?
I believe that's called informed consent.
That would be informed consent. And that's for that's for approved.
Right. So if these vaccines are approved, where is that?
They are not
don't,
approved.
they're not approved. That's why they don't have
They are
them.
not FDA approved.
They're still in.
Why are they telling us they're FDA approved then?
Because, okay, let me break it down for you.
You're sassafras.
Here's the
I
thing.
like you.
Here's the thing. I'm going to ask. Let's do that. I'm going to ask all the questions that
Love
the
that.
people that would be opposed
Okay.
would ask.
Okay. That's the first one?
Because I'll be honest, I'm on the fence.
Okay. I will switch you today.
Okay.
So,
Well, it's not your job to switch them. You're just,
Oh, okay.
you're just
All
trying.
right.
You're just trying to
Inform.
fine.
We don't want to switch anybody.
Okay.
We just want to let them switch themselves.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put this seed in your head.
Yeah.
This is what it is. So, they have to go through phased trials,
Right.
phase 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Now, we're still in phase I think it's phase 2.
Phase 1. I think it's still phase 1.
Is it 1?
No,
I thought we
phase
jumped to 2.
Yeah, we jumped to 2. Yeah, you're right.
So I think it's phase 2, right? We're in phase 2, which is they're still collecting the data. The data is still being collected. If you take the shot, what's your reaction? X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Same for you. But these vials, you have to think about it. Somebody's getting the placebo. Somebody's getting a saline injection.
Wait, is that real?
It has to be if they're clinical trials. There has to be a blind study for it to be effective.
And that is...
Wait. Hold on. Is that what's happening right now?
Okay, so let me break this down for you. So when you do this research, right, to get the FDA approval, let's say you have, so if I'm not mistaken, there was a group of 40,000 people, and no one knew if they were getting the vaccine or a placebo. That's how they control it. So you, as the individual taking it, has no idea what you're taking.
Yeah, you don't know what you get. It's a blind study.
And that's how you can't. An individual can't.
It's like not biased.
Teeter away,
right?
So they can't go one. Bias is the perfect word.
You're getting
for
a sugar pill. Yeah.
So if you know that you're getting a vaccine,
you can be like, I got the right thing.
Yeah, and mind over matter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So now I don't know if this information is true, because I heard it. So in this trial of, I think it was 44,000 people for Pfizer, the vaccinated group had 1 COVID death and the placebo group had 2. The argument is that's how they can get to the number of efficacy that they get. So it's kind of it's kind of like a math thesaurus.
Right.
So based on what you want based on what your results you want to be, you look at the data and you say, okay, is the glass half full or is it half empty?
Right.
But
and
these
just
studies
based on how you say it
can go either way. But these studies aren't big enough. If we're giving it to everybody in the United States,
the children was 1,200.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, and there was a little girl.
Well, and what were the results of the trial?
The clinical trial? They stopped it.
I heard they stopped it because it wasn't blind anymore.
What happened is that they stopped
figured it out.
They stopped it because they realized. So there's 2 things. There's something called relative risk reduction and absolute risk reduction. Relative risk reduction is 4 out of 5 doctors recommend.
Right.
Absolute risk reduction is like 5 of those doctors think is bullshit. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like when you actually look at the data. So the relative risk reduction, according to the data from the drug companies, was like 95%. The absolute risk reduction was anywhere between 0.8 and 1.5 of you not getting COVID. So what the study found out was that you have to vaccinate 22,000 people to save 1 life.
To save 1 life.
That's what the math of the study says.
Okay. So, okay.
But in those 22,000 people that are vaccinated, you have to see what the side effects are also, which are being underreported.
So the other thing about that study is that, now let me get the math on this right. So on the adverse event part of it, in the vaccinated group, there were 5 adverse events, and in the unvaccinated group, there was like 1. So what the study basically said was that you have a 500 times higher risk for specifically, I believe it was myocarditis.
Yeah.
By taking it. So if what I said previously about the placebo group and the vaccinated group was if 2 people died in the vaccinated group and 2 people died in the placebo group, it's null and voided. There's no benefit.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so I have questions. This is fun. Why?
Have I said anything wrong yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Why is nobody talking about the adverse effects and the deaths from the vaccine? They are real.
They're real.
Why is nobody talking about it?
I'm talking about it. Why aren't the big people talking about it though?
Well, I mean, specifically, why is nobody who is telling people like you have to take this vaccine, you're mandated to take this vaccine?
Right.
Why does nobody want to acknowledge the fact that I think a lot of people have died,
right,
and a lot of people have had a lot of adverse effects?
I don't know why
is that not part of the conversation?
I don't know. It should be part of the conversation. That's what That's what informed consent is.
Right.
We need to know what the heck is what we're getting into our bodies.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen. What could potentially happen.
Well, that's the thing. Like these doctors and pharmacists and, even up to, Fauci and Joe Biden, get your vaccine. They don't even, do they know what's in it?
No, I don't think so.
There's no you're only liable. You only have to release your ingredients once you get full approval.
Full approval. Now, the ones that are on the market are not, we don't have any of the camaraderie in
Comanity.
In the United States. It's not. That's the one that was FDA approved. Now it's different from the one that's on the market now, which is still under emergency use authorization, which means that is not approved.
Well, and doesn't it also mean that you can't be held legally responsible for anything that goes wrong?
Correct. So the other thing is that the emergency use authorization of these things ends on January 15th
of this year.
Yes.
So when the day that they approved the name brand,
why there's such a strong
Comanity.
Do you think that's why there's such a strong push right now to get people vaccinated?
Yes.
100%.
They have another 10 days?
And I don't think they can re-up it.
I don't know.
Right?
I don't
know if they can re-up.
Well, the state of Pennsylvania re-upped all theirs when, they were doing their crazy shit.
I thought once this EUA was done, that was the last.
The problem with the EUA is that once it's over, all the money goes away.
Right.
So in the emergency use authorization, when they improved these things on warp speed, it was like these are approved, blah, blah, blah.
They took all the
and then there was a comma. And that comma said, in lieu of other treatments.
Right.
Right.
If you can prove that there is preventative measures that you can take not to get ill, as opposed to getting a vaccine, it goes away.
And that's why they're not pushing early treatment.
So, yeah, I mean, I have so many questions. One being...
You got time?
I got time.
One being, why did, I think it was Pfizer, sue the FDA to be able to blacklist...
75 years?
Yeah, blacklist the trial results for 75 years. Why would you do that?
I would do that if it were me and my business, is because I'm hiding something.
Yeah.
I'm securing something that I don't want people to know. What is it? I don't know.
That would be the only thing.
What is it? The adverse effects? Is it the long-term effects that they know about?
The adverse effects are being reported on the CDC website. Nobody's talking about it though.
Okay, but you need to.
But you're hiding them at the bottom of some crazy page.
But also, I think that they're just...
And that's speculation, that as a business...
I'm
just saying, these are things that we have to say,
it's speculation that if it were my business, that's why I would keep it under wraps, is because I'm scared of the outcome. They were saying that they know that these were the adverse effects before they even started vaccinating.
Right.
There was a young girl in the children trials named Maddie DeGarry. Okay. Out of the 1,200 kids.
Yeah.
She is now wheelchair bound for life and eats through a feeding tube.
She had a seizure right after administration. Yeah.
How old was she?
I think she's 13 or 14.
Was she in good health before?
Yes.
I mean, I guess she wouldn't be part of a medical trial if she wasn't.
So here's how here's how you look at the math. If there's 1,200 kids in the trial, one of them ends up like Maddie DeGarry.
Yeah.
1 in 1,200 will have that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they're like,
theoretically.
And some people...
And now you have to, now you compare those. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. And now you say, okay, 1 in 1,200 could potentially end up like Maddie DeGarry. And then you look at the fact where you have to vaccinate 22,000 people to save one life. And when you put the numbers together, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
You have to vaccinate 22,000 to save one life.
Correct.
The risks outweigh any kind of benefit from these things.
So what would you say to people that got the vaccine and then, somebody that would otherwise probably pass from COVID, they get the vaccine and they made it through it?
I would tell them that the survival rate of COVID is 99.9%. For older people, it's like 97%.
Something like that.
The flu is worse. They don't the flu doesn't have a high rate like that.
COVID, according to the CDC, has killed 0 children without comorbidities.
Correct.
The number of children that have died with COVID, I think, is about 550. 1,000 kids in America drown per year.
Right.
And we didn't shut down the pools.
Right.
34.
And we're not forcing
3,400 die a year in car crashes.
Correct.
And RSV is still higher.
Yeah, that's rhinovirus. Is that rhinovirus? Or
yeah.
What is that?
So
RSV goes. I heard there's a strain of that going around. What does that stand for?
My medical terminology. I don't know.
Okay, so but it usually affects children.
It smaller children.
Yes.
It's like a really bad cold for them,
Right.
but because they're so underdeveloped, they usually wind up in the hospital because of it. My son had it. My youngest, he had it. He had to get like nebulizer treatments. It's like a bad like asthma attack, if you want to think about it that way.
Yeah.
That still exists.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything about it.
Right. So
We didn't shut down the world. We didn't do anything, and we're not acting like crazy people because of RSV.
and the flu
24 to 64,000.
for kids is
Yeah,
higher still.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
COVID.
So I know this number too. Isn't this crazy?
I know, it's great.
The number of children that die per year from the flu,
Mm-hmm.
and that's under 18,
Mm-hmm.
is 39.6.
Okay.
The
number
0.6
out of what's that? Out of 1,000?
thousand,
Out of 100,000. I think it's 39.6 out of 100,000.
which that's still more than COVID.
COVID is 6.
Out of 100,000?
Yes.
Does that include
Yes.
all of them?
Yes.
Not the comorbidities,
Yes.
just all of them?
Yes. Yes. All yeses. You're 6 times more likely as a child to die from the flu. Over 6 times more likely.
And the biggest thing with the kids back in school,
Yeah.
that I'm thinking about it, it's not the masks that are keeping them more healthy this time around. It's the
Right.
cleaning that they implemented. Like they had to come up with a health and safety plan, but they also had to come up with like this cleaning regimen for the schools,
Yeah.
and different businesses did too, right?
Yeah.
They have to like clean every so
We
often
actually
or
had
whatever.
to kind of make up our own. So when
Right,
our,
you have
when
to
our
make- you have to
business,
submit it.
You had to submit it. Oh, yeah.
You
That's
have
right.
to submit like your own
yeah.
thing.
yeah.
The school had to submit one too,
Yeah.
and they do more cleaning. And I don't know if, and my kids started in Dunmore. They were in Dunmore before we moved to Clark Summit.
How do you like your meat?
Great.
Done more.
They had to get temperatured and hand sanitizer right when they walked through the door. So they're washing their kids' hands more often.
Right.
They're cleaning the building surfaces more often. That's why they're not getting more sick. Because
Yeah.
I remember one of the parents said, well, my kid always comes home with something from school, and this year they didn't because of the mask. I'm like, it's because of cleaning, because they wash their hands.
Can I play devil's advocate on that though?
Sure.
Like, so
You having fun yet?
Yeah.
Okay,
love
good.
it.
By the way, I've never seen anyone drink out of an igloo cooler.
It's great,
Oh, I
isn't it?
oh, I have.
The half gallon.
You need more water, man.
Yeah, I just
Drink more
keep filling
water.
this thing up.
So I have a theory on this, and it might this might be controversial. I don't know. I think we have a problem in this country specifically by overprotecting and bubble wrapping kids, and I think it'll have a negative long-term effect on those kids.
I think now they're like the generations now, definitely.
I mean, I think, and this might be controversial. I don't know, but
Because who does anymore?
right.
For
I
real.
think that you look at, and this is going to take a sharp left turn, but hear me out on it. If you look at what has been going on in our schools for the past 24 or 5 years since Columbine with school shootings, I think it has a direct effect and response to, in the 1990s, the anti-bullying campaigns that happened.
I was in that in middle school.
Okay. So,
Columbine?
No, they
Oh, the bullying.
no
Were you
bullying
bullied?
allowed.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We had a group.
I'm not saying it's okay to bully. I want to reiterate that for anybody that might be listening. I'm not saying it's okay to bully. But when I was a kid, if I had a problem with another kid at school, we would meet behind the bleachers and we would fight. When it was done, somebody would buy somebody a hot dog and an ice cream, and we became best friends because that's just how it happened.
Right.
Good fight, Jim. Here's a
Seriously.
a swirl and a hot dog.
And we became very close friends.
Right.
Because you went through something together and it was like, we had a problem, we sorted it out, it was good, it's done.
Right.
And that, albeit I don't want it to happen, but that avenue for release and conflict resolution was taken away. And then people with psychological problems, social problems, socioeconomic problems,
Right.
whatever the case may be, found a gun and created horrific crimes. I think with kids, we're doing the same thing now, but in a medical way.
Right.
You know, as a kid, you get hurt, you get injured, you fall, you learn to be tough, you learn to recover. You know, we used to say, you know, rub some dirt on it.
Right.
All of those things. Your body got used to infections. Your body got used to disease. You
Sure.
built a strong immune system by
Right.
exposing yourself to things that forced you to be stronger.
Right.
Nobody ever got fitter and healthier by not going to the gym.
Right.
But
Just
going to
wishing
the
it.
gym, when you work out, when you lift weights, it tears the muscles and they rebuild stronger.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
It's just how the human body is designed to work. So when you wear masks for 2 years straight and you are constantly cleaning to a level where you're no longer exposed to anything negative other than your own breath, you're going to destroy your immune system.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
or at least in that location.
Yeah. But then all of a sudden something comes along like the common cold or the flu, which you normally would have just gotten it, eaten some chicken soup, stayed at home for 2 days and then go about your life.
Yeah.
Now it's really knocking people out.
Right.
I think if you look around now at what's happening with COVID, all these people that spent 2 years masked, fully vaccinated, indoors,
no
not
sunlight,
working out, living in fear, the psychological toll. And now we have the highest COVID count now of any time over the past 2 years.
Right.
And everybody's vaxxed and boosted.
Exactly.
And wearing masks.
Everyone, it doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense.
Makes no sense to us. Why doesn't it make sense to, everyone else?
What do you think it is? What do you think is... there's this new term that just came in called mass formation psychosis.
Right. And that's what the priming is. They primed us in the beginning to feel this way, and people still feel this way. They still feel like it's this huge thing, They don't understand that viruses evolve.
When you say primed, do you mean primed like grooming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like they were spewing these things on the TV. We were everyone who stopped working, everyone stopped working besides us healthcare workers, right? People were just like, they were scared, and they're still scared because they're seeing it on the TV that, oh my God, it's another one. They ran out and got vaccinated. Now people that are vaccinated, well, you can get it. They're like, well, what the hell? What do you mean?
Are you hearing that?
Yeah.
Are you hearing that from people who've been vaccinated?
Yeah. They're like, what the hell? How did I get this? I'm like,
because
Yeah, I know.
but you know,
because you fell for the lie.
Right.
Well, look, here's the thing. At the time, I can't say, in hindsight, I can say that it was definitely misleading.
Well,
it's for sure misleading.
Yeah.
If you don't know anything about healthcare and they're telling you that this is the end all to the pandemic, go out and get vaccinated. Like, that's why I think that's why a lot of people did it. They thought,
because they're just like, this is exhausting.
They're like, I'm over it. I'm just going to get this so I don't have to wear a mask anymore. And then all of a sudden,
but why did they take the mask off? Were they told that you were safe?
Yes. Remember when it came out, they changed it. If you're vaccinated, you do not need to wear a mask.
Yeah.
People were ripping it off.
Well, they also told us if you get the vaccine that you can't get COVID.
Exactly. So, and then when people are getting it and they're getting COVID bad, like worse off than some people would who have natural strong immune systems, and they're getting the COVID pneumonia as we hear about it.
What is that?
So
have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I have.
What is that?
So the COVID actually went into their lungs.
It's a respiratory illness.
Illness. It causes fluid to build up in the lungs, and you get like real congested. You're coughing up that ugly brown yellow sputum, if you want to call it. And some people end up on oxygen at home. A lot of people do recover from it, if they take their medicine. But I saw it more often once these vaccines hit.
And you saw more pneumonia.
The COVID pneumonia.
Vaccinated
I
patients.
did. And these are the patients that aren't going anywhere. They're not doing anything. Like, they're not like, oh, I'm vaccinated, I'm going to go to this concert, I'm going to go to,
yeah,
balls out, right?
Yeah.
They're like, I don't even go anywhere. How did I get this? And I'm like, well, sorry. I don't have an answer for you.
Well, because I know of a lot of people who were terrified of this, that did everything that they could to be safe and still got it. And then I was like,
I know so many.
I was trying to lick toilet seats just to get it and get it over with.
I know.
And I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it until like 3 weeks ago. And then I was really surprised when I got it.
Yeah. You're like, what the hell? Where did this come from?
It broke my brain. I never really got sick, but it broke my brain.
And the other aha moment for me, going into patients' homes, I'm dealing with COVID patients, they were like, if I was exposed, right?
Yeah.
Even though like I'm required to wear PPE at work, obviously, I was like, they're like, well, you need to be off for 3 days. And I'm like, well, why? I'm not sick, Yeah. And then all of a sudden we were dropping nurses because we were all getting exposed. And they're like, oh, well, we're just going to change our policy because if you get exposed, you just need to monitor your symptoms. I'm like, okay.
So they're just randomly changing, arbitrarily changing the rules.
Right. Because we were all just exposed from this patient. And we can't be down 3 nurses. Our company's not huge. It's not like a hospital, So they were like, well, you can work if you're not sick. Now, if you're COVID positive in the hospital, you can take care of COVID patients. They changed it completely.
Yeah, but shouldn't that have been like the smart thing to do at the beginning?
Well, yeah. But now they don't have any nurses, period.
How
So
many
they're
how many nurses do you know of that were like your peers that are no longer doing it or has
Wait, did
changed?
you just say if somebody's COVID positive, they can still work and take care of COVID patients?
Correct. The CDC announced that.
Okay.
That was new to me. I didn't know
Okay.
that.
Oh,
When
I'm
was
coming
that?
in with
When was that?
facts.
When was that?
Just like real recently, last week. Actually, like a couple days ago.
So I
Within
remember
a week.
I do know that they reduced the quarantine
so
time,
they
but I didn't hear that.
They were, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, maybe I just have an in because I know people in the hospital still. But no, we can look it up. It's online.
That's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
Why didn't they do that at the beginning?
It's hard to say. I want to say it's because they were scared and didn't know what was going on, but I don't think that was the motive.
Did you have fellow people in your profession who were like, this is like we're not treating patients?
That we're scared of COVID?
No, that we're like, we're not treating patients. Like we need to treat our patients.
Oh.
We can't just tell them to stay home until they turn blue and go to the ER.
No, I didn't have any people that were like, we need you to come in.
No. I mean, like
Oh.
people that like you, not like you work for, but you work with.
Well, let me back it up. So when he got COVID, I'll ask it this way. When he got COVID, I remember you called your doctor and asked to be
What should I do?
It was a
I'm sorry,
it was a
Can
terrible.
I say this? Can I just say all this? I just want to, before I
Well, do you
reveal your medical history. I'm going to do it anyways.
There's no freedom in it. There's no medical autonomy
Sucks.
anymore.
Not here.
But now with my fucking friends.
So he calls his doctor and is like, hey, can you prescribe me a Z-Pack? Now he had no symptoms, just like, let's be preventative and, and right off the bat.
Do you want me to tell the quick story about it?
Tell the quick version.
So I test positive on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
Right. I know what I want to do. I know what to
Yeah.
take. I call my doctor the next morning, who's been my doctor for over 20 years.
Right.
His nurse practitioner calls me and I said, hey, I kind of have like a sinus infection. Can you give me a Z-Pack? First question, did you take a COVID test?
Right.
And I said, no.
Ooh.
And she
Lies.
said, because I know where this is going.
Right.
And I said, she goes, well, we can't give you anything until you take a COVID test. And you can't take a COVID test here. I said, okay, I know of a place that I can go get a
Right.
rapid test. Okay, if I'm positive,
Can you
will
give me
you
that?
give me a Z-Pack? And the response to me was, there is no treatment for COVID.
Wow.
And I said, okay, if I'm negative,
Can you give
will
me?
you give me a Z-Pack?
I don't want to.
And then she said, yes. And I said, tell me how that makes fucking sense.
Yeah.
So she goes, it's our protocol.
Wow.
And I said,
Protocols are killing people.
I said, I will call you later. I call up the medical clinic.
Yeah.
And my first question is, if I have COVID, will you give me anything? And they go, yes, we will give you a Z-Pack and a steroid. That's what we do for everybody.
Right.
I said, I'll be right over.
Wild.
Then when my brain broke,
Right.
and it felt, the best way to describe it is it didn't feel, it felt like an artificial illness.
Right.
I tried to get monoclonal antibodies. I got approved for monoclonal antibodies. You can't, there's a health center around here that is doing their
I knew
monoclonal
that.
antibodies by lottery.
Oh, I didn't know it was lottery.
Oh
now.
yeah. So regardless of
Honesdale?
how ill you are, well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
So in Honesdale, so regardless of how ill you are, it's a lottery system.
Interesting.
Whether you're overweight, whether you're underweight, whatever.
Right.
It's just, we're just going to pick your name out of a hat. Good luck.
Wow.
Up in Honesdale, they have a hospital that I called.
Right.
And they said, sure, have the doctor call us.
Ah, you're a
After-
doctor?
No, I wasn't going to have him. I was going to have another doctor. But it took 4 days
Wow.
to get those two groups to talk.
Right.
And at that point, I was at day 10.
Right. So
I'm like, there's
pointless.
no point. There's no point now. But it was agonizing just to get like, at the end of it, what I found out was I didn't realize how broke
the system
the
is.
system is.
The protocols are what truly is killing everybody. The protocols in the hospital. The ICUs around the country have the same protocol, ventilation and remdesivir, and
And remdesivir has been found to shut down your kidneys
60% of patients.
and kill you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Multi-organ failure, actually.
What,
You've seen this. You've seen this happen.
I've seen the study.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of everybody.
What is
made me-
remdesivir for?
It's like an antiviral. Fauci did a study on it for Ebola.
Uh-huh.
And in that study, it said that it, kind of helped with Ebola.
Okay.
Which are two different. Ebola is one of the most virulent, pathogenic
Right.
things.
Right.
And it has a high mortality.
Hi. Ebola does. Plus, and then
Ebola's mortality is like 90.
it's insane.
Well, and that's the thing. So, like, if you have something that's like, listen, you have a 90% chance of dying for this, give me the thing that's going to have a 40% chance or 60% chance of some sort of adverse effect. That's common sense.
And that's fine because
but if
you've
have
experienced cancer.
0.5% dying of this.
Yes.
Right.
Like I remember with our son when he went through everything, those early conversations with the doctor were brutal.
Scary.
He had it was essentially a terminal cancer. He's the only kid to ever survive it in the country.
Wow.
And I remember the conversations of like, he might not make it off the operating table. It was so brutal. And then it was like, these are the possible side effects of this chemo.
Right.
And it was a laundry list of everything you don't want to see happen to your kid.
Right.
And ironically enough, becoming a 17-year-old hassle was not on the list.
That was just extra.
That was extra. But like you make those decisions because the other option is sure death.
Right.
So that makes sense. I don't understand, and stay on that for 1 second. So I remember there were certain things that we were like, hey, what if we try this? And they were like, no, it's unnecessary because it might make him sick or this or the other, but we're not going to give it to him because he's a kid. He's going to bounce back. It's unnecessary. What happened in the medical community that we now have something that is, it looks like a flu or a severe cold, more deadly early on, more contagious early
more deadly without treatment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Early treatment.
But it was something that had a very low mortality rate, even though a lot of people have died from it. It was still very low, all things considered.
Sure.
I mean, when you take a step back and say, 500,000 people died in year one or 600,000 people. Okay, but we have 600,000 people die every year from cancer.
Right.
800,000 from heart disease.
Right.
Like, yes, it's a huge number and you don't want it to happen.
But
that's not unusual.
Just so people can know that the all-cause mortality and the deaths that were predicted for the last 3 years have not gone up.
No, they're actually, I think they've gone down slightly.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Just to let people know that.
Yeah. Well, as my father-in-law early on said it, he said, what's happening with COVID, and this was maybe a month, 6 weeks into it, what's happening with COVID is, and he's a funeral director, he goes, all of those funerals that we would be doing next year, we're going to do over the next 2 months.
Wild. Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Right.
So how did we get to a point where we're saying, this isn't polio.
Right.
It is very different.
Very different.
This isn't, measles, mumps, rubella. Those are very different things. And, and I'm saying that to say like, this conversation we're having, people are going to label us anti-vaxxers. I'm not.
No.
Like, those are good things to vaccinate. We've seen a good history. We could agree to disagree on certain things, but like, those are very different than this. This is a bad cold flu that while it is killing a lot of people, I'm not trying to minimize it, it is not affecting kids hardly at all. And
the thing with the people aren't like out there like about the flu, like when we had the regular flu, shall we call it, they weren't getting vaccinated at these rapid speeds that these people are taking 4 in 1 year. Are they crazy?
Well, I saw it. Somebody posted something the other day and said, if you took 3 smallpox vaccines in a year and and still got smallpox, I think you'd be pissed.
And the thing with you were saying like polio, I've heard people like, well, they cured polio with the vaccine. That's because it was only in, it didn't jump from human to animal polio.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no animal reservoir.
There's the only reservoir was humans. They made it because they discovered it because of a cat, like people working with like a certain type of animal did not contract polio, and that's what they extracted it from, and that's how they made it. That's how they discovered it. I mean, I should say. This has an animal reservoir. It jumps from our cats and dogs and deers are coming up positive.
Yeah, I saw the article where it's
Zoo
like
animals.
the deers are testing positive for, and I'm like, what the
gorillas,
fucking deers?
So this actual strain of COVID is bouncing back and forth?
Not just coronaviruses in general.
Coronaviruses.
They have something
Correct.
called an animal reservoir, which means it can jump.
It can jump. It can survive. It survives.
Which is how they know, like,
and it's never
a
going
pangolin.
away.
I was just going to ask, is that how did this develop in the animal world and then jump to humans? No. This might sound very controversial.
No, it was in a bat, and then the bat flew 1,000 miles to a lab, and then shit at the lab, and then somebody put it in a wet market, and that's how we got fucking COVID. At least that's what they tell us.
That's what they tell us.
So, it was interesting that he brought up children, and that's why one of the reasons why I want you here is, first of all, your medical experience, and then you have 3 young kids in a public school.
I do.
How has that been for you?
I've never
since the beginning.
Yeah, so I never really thought about public school that much until this all happened, like COVID hit.
And your kids are what grade?
Between 7 and 10, you said, or 6 and 10?
9, 7, and 6. So kindergarten, second grade, fourth.
Okay.
So they're all basically elementary.
They're all elementary school.
Yeah.
Like I said, I never really thought twice about sending them to school until this whole, like, to watch how the school districts kind of handled it. I was like, this is insane. You know, like they're, you know, saying that they want to keep our kids safe and all that fun stuff. And they're denying, you know, medical exemptions. Like, it's our decision at this point for masking.
What do you think is going to happen with medical exemptions?
I don't know.
They're not giving them to anybody.
They're not granting. And, you know,
It's never been. That's unheard of.
Unheard of.
And I'm not talking religious exemption. I'm talking medical exemption. So my son, we haven't crossed this bridge yet, but he will have a medical exemption
for sure. You know, even on the Department of Health website, when they were, you know, put that extra order in, or whatever you want to call it, it said that, you know, you can have a medical exemption and you don't need a doctor's, you know, narrative, no signature, anything like that. You just need, this is the medical exemption, you know, and my kids don't need to wear a mask. But when I submitted that, I was told that I need a narrative from my doctor and a signature. And I was like, well, I'm a medical professional. Like, can I write my own narrative? Even though I'm, you know, I'm obviously not a doctor. I don't have, you know, script privileges or anything like that. They told me no. And I was like, well, I'm going to need my, you know, denial in writing. And I haven't yet to receive that.
Well, no, I'm talking about the vaccine.
Oh.
Not just masks. I'm talking about a vaccine medical exemption.
That's a whole nother ball game.
The masks, it's already been deemed unconstitutional that you can require a mask.
Here we are.
So,
I mean, now a business can do it.
Right.
And that's fully within their right. And if they do it, for me as a business owner, it's like, listen, if a business requires a mask, my 2 cents, I think you're kind of an asshole if you go to that business and don't do it.
Right.
It's like, that's fair. But the schools, public schools, are public government entities. They fall under the same rules of what can be constitutionally required, and masks cannot.
Right.
So why are we still having this conversation?
I don't know.
I guess we need a lawyer or a constitutional expert.
So I'm assuming that a lot of the moms got together. Like I think what's going to change a lot of this is the fight. Is the moms.
Yeah. Well, I have like a little mom group that I talk to them. I talk to some of them. There's for Abington specifically, there's like a parent like coalition on Facebook.
Yeah.
That we, you know, put our 2 cents in all the time. So I think, you know, if school districts don't have that, which it seems like most districts do, not just in Pennsylvania and other states, they have parents that are, you know, willing to stand up to the board. Yeah, they're active. They're, you know, spitting out facts, spitting out, you know, what should and should not be done for their own children, things like that. I think that's the only thing that we have going, to be honest with you. Because if we all laid down, they'd be like, they can do whatever the hell they want. They don't think twice about it. The only reason why they're thinking twice about it is because we're in their face.
What would you say to the people that are saying, like, it's just a mask, it's not a big deal, even if it just makes somebody feel better?
That's fine for them. They can make your own decision. But for me, my children, my family, that's my decision. And that's all that I should be caring about. I don't care about what you do.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you shouldn't be caring about what I do with my family.
So did you have like a breaking point where you're like, because like you said, you didn't care about public school.
Right.
What was the point where you're like, I need to get active and this is...
Well, it was this actually going back into the new school year this year, because, you know, before when they were virtual, my kids were virtual. They didn't go anywhere. I didn't make them wear a mask anywhere. The first time they had to wear a mask was to go to school, you know? And then this year I was like, okay, so like the numbers are down this summer. Like we're good. Like I know they're coming back optional. And then when I heard that they flipped it like 2 weeks before school, I was like, that's it. I'm going to bring some facts for them. Cause I didn't know anybody up here. Cause I had just moved up to Clark Summit last year. So I didn't know any parents. I didn't know any other, you know, moms that.
It's a little cliquey. I graduated Abington. It's a little cliquey.
And you know what? Like our area is like, you know, pretty liberal. So I didn't know if my views would be.
Did you notice that?
I just a little bit. So I didn't know if my views lined up with anybody else, you know? So I was a little nervous at the first school board that I spoke at. But then I realized.
Did you speak in September?
It was in August.
It was in August, so immediately.
Yeah, so it was before school started. And I didn't realize. And then that's where I met on my mom group.
So what was the reaction
they were like,
from the board?
Well, the board, it was like in one ear and out the other. They were just like trying to get through that meeting.
What's it feel like as a parent to have the right to speak and no one
it's so
up there is
fucking
listening
annoying.
to you?
Like last night I went and I didn't plan on speaking because I was like, they don't even fucking listen to us.
Right.
Because, you know, I watch all the other people talk and I watch their reactions and they're just like, You know, like they're just like had this like
they're
look
thinking,
on their face.
they're
They don't
thinking
give a
about
shit.
Tetris. Yeah.
And then like after that big meeting in August, I remember, the public comment was done and I forget her name, the one lady on the board. She's like, so anyway, and then they started talking about the contract that they got approved. And I was like, they don't fucking care. They don't care. They're not listening.
It was almost like somebody hit mute on you guys.
Yeah. Just like hurry up and get over it.
Right.
Just get through it. And like, some people make comments like in the audience, I guess you could say, whatever you want to call them, because some of them are for it or whatever. And like when they see us roll up, their eyes are rolling, like, oh, things God. Like that. So
here's the science deniers with facts.
But last night, I mean, if you watched it, it kind of was positive. Like I felt like with the new superintendent there, maybe they were trying to like, show off in front of them, like the other board members.
Really?
I felt like
is that a thing?
That's a thing.
Why would you do that? Why would you show off in front of the new superintendent?
I mean,
Who gives
like,
a shit?
I just I like to like read people, and like that's what I read from the rest of the board. I was like, they were trying to like
kiss an ass.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. Yeah. If that's what they do. What was it like? How's it been like for your kids over the last 3-4 months?
Oh my God, they can't understand why they need to wear a mask at school because they don't wear masks anywhere else.
Right. And
I tried to like drill them in the beginning before school started. I'm like, you don't need to wear the mask. And if the teacher tells you have to, tell them to call me, type of thing.
Right.
But we raise our kids to like respect authority.
Mm-hmm.
They're like 9. My oldest is, and he's like scared to get in trouble. So he's not going to tell the teacher, be like, no, my mom said like, I don't need to wear this. I don't need it. So if they get told to put a mask on, they just put the mask on. So it's like, it's really hard with younger kids. I wish my kids were older, like teenagers, high schoolers, be like, fuck you. I don't need to wear this. But, but they can't comprehend. They know, because I'm always like, you don't need it. We're just, we're not going anywhere else with it on. They can't comprehend it. They don't like to wear them because they come home sopping wet. It's disgusting.
Yeah, what's that? Yeah, it's almost.
I'm like, are you drinking your water through your mask? Like, what are you doing?
I've seen some of them, the kids, where it looks like they just put like a shitty diaper on their face. Like literally, it looks terrible.
It's disgusting. Like even like it's so
the mask
gross.
That I have in my truck, which I've worn twice, in the past, I don't know, however long. Like ever since the CDC came out, and it was like you don't have to wear them indoors. I'm like, see ya,
bye.
I've worn it maybe twice, but before that, I think I had the same mask that I wore for like 6 months.
I've never cleaned it.
No,
ew.
It's gross.
No.
I'm so stupid just to like
hilarious.
prove a point.
I know. It's like ripped.
It keeps going back to like, take your vaccine, wear a mask. All right, vaccines are one thing, masks are another. So let's talk about masks.
Well, wait. Let's put a pin in that because I think not a pin, but let's burst that fucking balloon because the numbers right now, I think we can all agree that those two things don't work.
Correct, is what I'm saying.
So let's not. I mean,
everybody was told to wear a mask, but we know the cloth masks don't work. Only the N95s fitted.
Right.
And nobody was ever told how, it's like nobody was ever told how to like properly care for them and take care of them. Like,
right.
Never once did anybody hear how often they were supposed to change their masks. Because what you're telling me is every time you wear one, you should throw away and get a new one.
Correct.
If you don't do that, it's useless.
And I was in surgeries that were 8+ hours, and if you're in there all day and you only get breaks for like bathroom and lunch, you go out and change your mask.
Do you take a lunch when you got somebody open on the table?
Well, like another nurse comes in.
You're not like you're not like working on my uncle and then you go to Subway, are you?
Accidentally dropping a piece of bologna into an open.
Was it like Seinfeld? Didn't Seinfeld do that?
I wasn't in the open body cavity. I was just on the sidelines.
So I
can I ask you another question?
Sure.
You seem like to me like you're probably like a fit person. You probably work out a little bit, try and go for hikes, things like that. Where have the Michelle Obamas of this world gone over the past 2 years? And by saying that, I mean
the men.
Don't do that.
People who for 8 years, and I thought it was a great thing, championed get fit, eat healthy.
Right. I don't know where they went.
Did those people go?
I have no idea. I mean, I go to the gym. I go to Crunch. And
so do I.
Oh my God. I'm like the 8:30 crew.
No, I went there yesterday.
Wow. The new year, new him.
My wife and I, that was the only thing that kept us sane through the whole shutdown, because our business was shut down for almost 4 months, is we were working out 3 times a day.
Right.
That was the only
nothing else to do.
There was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And, we worked out pretty aggressively until a couple months ago. And we're like, all right, we need a break. And then, of course, I embraced it and ate everything I could find.
But the gym's pretty packed still. I mean,
it's packed.
It's packed.
But what happened from you work in the medical field,
right?
Why did no one talk about go outside, go for a hike, get some sun, do some push-ups?
Because that's too hard. That's hard.
Do you think it's too hard, or it was possible, or do you think that if they really dug their heels into health and getting fit, do you think that actually people would do it and then they can't sell more drugs because people are getting healthy?
Medicines are Band-Aids. That's what they are. They hide symptoms. Ooh. They hide. Okay, medications aren't supposed to be prescribed to take for the rest of your life. Right. You're able to re-heal your body. We have the tools. We just don't know what they are. You have to research and you have to do, it's hard to be healthy. Yeah. It's hard. Everything is processed now. The cheaper stuff, is easier to consume.
Sure.
The healthier stuff obviously is more expensive.
That's what they call Whole Foods whole paycheck.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so it's hard for people to do.
You go to the corner store and a bottle of water's $2.50 and a bottle of Mountain Dew's 99 cents.
Exactly. Yeah. And starting out, if you are overweight and it's hard. People don't want to do it because it's hard work. So you have to stay consistent with it.
Right, but they're willing to shut down their businesses.
Right.
Completely turn around their lives, take time away from loved ones, do all of these things that are incredibly hard, but they're not willing to go for a walk and eat a salad.
They did it without ease, though. People did that stuff without ease. Not go to holidays recently because of this. They did that without ease. They didn't second guess it.
Without ease?
Yeah, they did it without, it was easy for them to do it. It was
to not go do those things.
To keep their businesses closed. It was harder because you had to fight to keep it open, right?
Oh, that makes much more sense. Yeah.
So to do
in my brain,
right?
Yeah.
That's not. Am I saying it right?
No, don't worry. Every time we do this, I say something that's off of the wall.
I just said the average age of death was 28 and a half. So
we're like
30 minutes,
and I'm like, I made it. I'm a miracle.
But those things were easy because everybody was doing it. Everyone was shutting down. Everyone was staying home. Everyone was
all
doing
this together.
Right.
Yeah.
Stay home, stay safe. That was the priming things that they were saying to people. And it's funny because that's what my patients say when I leave the house, stay safe. I'm like, I'll try, as I'm walking out the door.
So what I know that there are some people that have engaged counsel in terms of the mandates for their children.
Right.
Is anything like that going on up in Abington or that you know of? I think Lake Ariel was doing a thing.
Lake Ariel, North Pocono.
In regards to masking?
Right. Okay. See, our school hasn't said anything about vaccination. They have vaccination clinics.
It's coming.
It is coming. And they said at the one board meeting that would never be on topic, requirement wise.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that were said 2 years ago that are now becoming very true.
That's the only legal counsel that they're looking for right now is for masks.
Do you remember when the last presidential campaign was going on and our now president was like, I would never require or mandate a vaccine?
Remember Fauci said that they're not allowed to do that?
Yeah. It's
the
highly irregular. It violates the Nuremberg Code, first of all.
100%. So do masks. It's a medical device. Can't make
that might be a bit of a stretch.
It's in the accounting book. That's a medical device.
That might be a bit of a stretch.
There's
a huge difference between you need to wear this.
Hold on one second.
You need to inject this into your body.
Hold on one second.
Are you Googling a medical device?
No.
Okay.
If you sprain your wrist,
right,
and they give you that thing, that is a device.
I understand.
If you put that on your face,
but you're comparing apples and oranges.
No.
Yes, you are.
Being required to put anything on you that isn't normal.
Medical
I
device.
understand.
Just because it's cloth or it's fabric.
But that's the difference.
And it has rubber bands.
That's the difference between calling the police and being like, my neighbor slapped me and my neighbor shot me.
I don't even think that's even equivalent.
Yes, it is.
It's not.
Because one is external, one is internal.
They're both external.
No, they're not.
My wrist and you're equating vaccines and the masks.
Yes.
No, I'm just talking about strictly fucking masks. Mask is a medical device.
Yes,
the vaccine is.
But it's not even.
Are they calling that a medical device
ballpark
now?
The vaccine, medical device.
Yeah, it's a medical. What was the thing? It was
definitely not a device.
It's definitely not a device. Well,
we'll think about that.
It's also a robbery device.
I don't know what that means.
The mask.
You put one on to rob people.
The fact that children can't see each other smile or laugh is heartbreaking to me. Like that was the thing. I think I said this to you when this first happened. I'm like the kids. Like this is going to be.
It's going to be brutal.
I remember saying to my husband,
trauma.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not putting a mask on them ever. And then they went to go to school.
But I get concerned about like all of them.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? Like I remember high school. It wasn't pleasant.
No.
And
mine was great
because you're in Tennessee. There's nothing. There's no. All you have down there is.
I was in England at the time.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Oh, foreign land, man in a foreign land.
Yeah.
They're
getting mad cow.
What the psychological impact that this is going to have on children,
right?
Because we can look at adults and say they're nuts. Like right now we're like, those people are fucking crazy,
right?
What is happening to the kids that no one's talking about, and they're only talking about it right around now, which doesn't make any sense to me to ignore it for 2 years.
Right. Well, I think that they're talking about it now because so many parents are coming out and being like, this is what's happening.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Anxiety is like at an all-time high. Like
suicides are up.
Right. Everything's
overdose
up.
deaths are up.
Everything. And some
to ignore
everything.
this is insane.
Right. Which it's not going to get better because they're, I keep saying they're primed, but they were primed to also the parents that were scared. Now their kids are super scared. You know what I mean? Because they listen to their authorities. So that's how we raise our kids to listen to authority. So if, everybody around you is telling you that you need to do this and this to stay safe or it's going to be horrible. Like those parents that keep their kids in for like 2 years before the vaccine came. Did you hear about those stories?
I saw some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't go anywhere. They didn't even leave the house. Like that's insane. So that kid now thinks that the outside world.
Yeah. Everything's going to hurt them.
Right.
Dude, that's not good.
That they have no social skills.
It's not good.
It's insane.
Well, I don't understand why we're never in the history of the world have the children sacrificed for the elderly.
It's wild.
Ever.
And like the parent, they don't.
But just to say, like, if I said that in 2019, I would not be crazy.
Right.
But because I'm saying it today,
it's like, well, this is a different story, and it's not. It's not at all.
It's not. You know what it's like? It's like, when I was younger, and there was drama. There was a lot of drama,
right?
Especially around. I hate to say it, but women. It would be like, but you don't understand, and it's like, no, you're not a unique story here.
Right?
Like that guy's a dick because you chose to go with him.
Right?
Everyone was telling you no.
Right.
But you went to do it, but they feel like, but it happened to me, so it's more. It means something.
Right. It's different this time.
It's not.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like people need to understand. It's like you got it. If everyone was just honest, like if people at the top were just honest about what was going on and pragmatic about their decision making and explaining their decision making,
right?
This would have went a hell of a different way.
Well, and that honestly, like for anybody who might be listening to this who would disagree with the conversation that's happened today, if you made it this far, congratulations.
You get a cookie.
Yeah. But where conspiracy theories stem from is and I hate to use the term conspiracy theory because it was literally created by the CIA in order to dispel the conspiracy theories surrounding the JFK assassination. Is that correct?
No, it was I believe it was the 40s. The CIA.
Yeah, the plan was to create this whole
the CIA.
It was just a way to be dismissive of people telling the truth.
Right.
But yeah. Conspiracy theories, and people nowadays are calling people conspiracy theorists because of their thoughts on vaccines or masks or whatever. That all stems from, and maybe this will help people who are listening who might disagree. It all stems from the people that are supposed to be the ones that we can trust, the authority. The people at the top of the food chain, they are not telling 100% of the truth.
Right.
And that's where conspiracy theories come from.
Right.
And
it's like, well, why aren't they telling the truth?
Exactly. So, there's a reason. And sometimes that reason is to protect people.
Right.
And that's understandable, but it's still going to lead to doubt.
Right.
So you have to be able to acknowledge the fact that, I always take it back to the original the great, like the godfather of modern conspiracy theories, and it's the assassination of JFK.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions that cannot be answered.
Right.
There's some things that are just blatant lies.
Right.
I mean, if you know anything about the basics of ballistics and how bullets coming out of a gun work, and what happens when they impact.
Okay, we
the
can't go
human
like real
body.
deep into fucking
Yeah, we are.
JFK right now.
But and then there's all of a sudden just a fully intact bullet just sitting on a gurney beside a body.
Right.
That's stupid. Like, it's just a blatant, obvious lie.
Right.
You know, so it's like you have to look at COVID and it's like, okay, where did the conspiracy theories come from? Well, they started
Right.
when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said, I will not take this vaccine. I don't trust it if it's coming from Donald Trump. That's where it started. And then fast forward, you have, Fauci, or no, before that, Fauci, you don't need to wear a mask, just wash your hands.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it comes out, if you take the vaccine, then you don't need to wear a mask. You can't get COVID. It's done. That wasn't true. And then it was wear 2 masks. And now we need a booster. And now we're at a
Now we
point
need to show your card.
in this whole thing.
Well,
At the end of this whole thing, here we are today, 2022, on Insurrection Day. And there are more people with COVID now than there have been at any time over the past 2 years.
Right.
Today, the majority of those
Right.
people that have confirmed COVID cases are vaccinated. They wore masks religiously. A good chunk of them are boosted. Obviously, everything that we've been told every step along the way was either at worst a blatant lie. At best, these people don't know what
Didn't
they're
know what
talking
they're
about.
yeah, exactly.
Why are we still going along with this?
I don't know.
That's my question.
Right.
And that's somebody who I don't like the masks, but that's not the hill I'm going to die on.
Right.
I want to die on the hill I'm willing to die on is vaccinating the kids.
Same.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Willing.
completely.
That's the hill I'm
I
willing
agree
to
with
die
that
on.
completely.
For sure.
So, look, do you have a heart out? You got to go to your kids, right?
I do.
I do too.
Okay. So, real quick, I want to just play something
Okay.
before we go. And I know that we think that the son of the former attorney general and the nephew of the former president of the United
Speaking of
States
the Kennedys,
is a lunatic. But I challenge anyone to tell me what part of this is wrong or a lie.
Ooh, I saw
Well, they
this
have
video.
to give it to kids because they cannot market this vaccine without having immunity shield. Oh, I mean, I sue pharmaceutical companies for a living, and I have enough criminal activity that I know about Pfizer at this point and Moderna. That if they went ahead and marketed a vaccine where they end up killing people or injuring them, and I can sue them, well, they'd be through. So they're never going to market a vaccine, allow people access to a vaccine, an approved vaccine, without getting liability protection. Now, the emergency use authorization vaccines have liability protection under the PrEP Act and the CARES Act. So as long as you take an emergency use, you can't sue them. Once they get approved, now you can sue them, unless they can get it recommended for children. All vaccines that are officially recommended for children, get liability protection, even if an adult gets that vaccine. That's why they're going after kids. They know this is going to kill and injure a huge number of children, but they need to do it for the liability protection. And here's how they know that it's going to injure kids. During the Pfizer study, they only tested it on 1,300 children.
I was wrong, 1,300.
And one of those we now know was a girl called Maddie Gary. We only know about this because she and her family came forward and told us what happened. Maddie Gary got the vaccine. She immediately went into seizures. She is now in a wheelchair for life, and she needs a feeding tube to eat. Because Pfizer only tested on 1,300 kids, it is stuck with the extrapolation. And 1 out of every 1,300 kids is going to be injured like that, an injury worse than death. Pfizer did not report her injury. Instead, it said she had a stomach ache. So that's what they reported to the FDA. They lied.
There you have
Did
it.
you know that, the stomach
I
ache
did.
thing?
Yep.
Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
If you know anybody else that's willing to talk
Sure.
and have conversations with us, or
Yeah.
if you ever want to come in with somebody,
All right.
I'd be absolutely grateful, because I
Awesome.
think
There's a lot you can say. You can go on for hours about this though.
This could be hours. and I just at the end of the day want people to be informed and less afraid.
Right.
And
especially for the kids.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, because this isn't doing anything to kids. It's just not.
No.
It's negatively doing things to kids.
Everything else
the reaction
is.
to it is doing something
the
to
reaction.
kids.
And the
cure is far worse than the disease.
Mm-hmm.
My want in the future is that, the parents who think that you're fucking nuts, that they realize that you're not an evil person.
No.
And that you're probably more compassionate than most.
My patients love me.
And that they'd be willing to engage in a conversation with you.
That's all we want. It's conversation.
Yeah. Just let's talk it out. Because that's how
relationship changes everything.
That's
exactly.
how, is there anything that you want people to know that we didn't go over?
I think we covered a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
So, do you have anything that you is there any like upcoming events or school board meetings or anything that people can know about?
There is something this Saturday at the church, the Servant Church.
I'm going to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go to that too.
I want to see Phil come on.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can.
That?
So it's like an event that he's ex-CIA.
That's what I read.
Right? He's ex-CIA and he's a lawyer now. He's going over Max vaccines, all that fun stuff in the community. There's that. And then there's Mothers for Freedom. January. I believe it's January 15th.
Okay.
It's like for moms in the area from all school districts who get together. They just like talk about what's going on in their school districts and see like kind of like button heads, see like what we can push on to if one school district's doing one thing,
we can be helpful.
We can be helpful. Also, numbers in board meetings actually help. So if you like
number of people
at the board meetings to kind of plead their cases, I guess. So I have to look that up. I can send you if you want to.
Sure.
Push that out too.
Also, there's the March Against the Mandates on January 23rd in Washington D.C. that is being put on by Dr. Malone and Pierre Corey and Peter McCullough. I keep fighting.
We're doing it. No way.
I don't think the rest of the country really understands how
it's severe,
sinister some of this stuff is.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah Naro,
that's it.
Nurse, mom, badass, CrossFitter. No, you just crunch.
No, just crunch. Just a cruncher.
Anything else you want to say?
What a week.
Fucking hell.
What
man.
a week.
All right.